Good afternoon. Today is May 13th, 2025. The time is 3 p.m. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education meeting. Here's our board president, C. Joseph Chang.
Thank you. All meetings of the Board of Education are open to the members of the public unless publicly noticed as a confidential closed section as allowed by the law. Members of the public may address the board as outlined in the public comment section of the agenda. The audience of all meeting is recorded, and a member of the public may be held liable for any sentence or otherwise defamatory statement. In consideration of the board and a member of the audience, please turn off silence your cell phone while in the boardroom. The San Marino Unified School District is encouraging those with a disability to participate fully in the public meeting process. If you need a disability-related modification or accommodation, including an auxiliary aid or service to participate in the public meeting, contact the assistant to the superintendent at the jdelatorre@smusd.us or call the 626-299-7000 extension 1310 at least 48 hours before the scheduled board meeting so that we may make every reasonable effort to accommodate you. Document provided to majority of the Board of Education regarding an open section item on this agenda will be made available for the public inspection in the district office located at the 1665 West Drive, San Marino, during the normal business hour. In addition, such writing as document may be reviewed on district website at the www.smusd.us. Before we collect the public comment, I'd like to do a roll call. Mrs. Lam.
Here.
Mr. Song.
Here.
Mrs. Ryan.
Present.
Mrs. Gear.
Here.
Mr. Chen. Here. Okay, let's collect the public comment. Oh, let me continue. A communication from the audience concerning matter on the special Board of Education meeting agenda may be heard at this time but not responded to by the Board of Education. The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matter pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide a public comment will have three options to submit public comment. First, submit through an online form. The public may submit public comment for the open or closed section on the May 13, 2025 from the 11 a.m. through the 2 p.m. Comment received during the time will not be read during the meeting, but will be provided to the Board of Education. Please submit a comment at the website. Did we have any submission via the online form?
There are no submissions.
Okay. Second, request to speak during the meeting via the Zoom. During the public comment, the meeting will pause for 1 minute to take a request to speak. This raise hand function is used to take a request during the public comment period. For online attendee, press the raise hand icon to add yourself to the queue. For phone attendee, dial 9. The speaking order will be determined based on the order of the request received. Individual speaker will be unmuted and called to the speaker. Mr. Hong, please pause the meeting for 1 minute to collect the public comment.
Well, we do not have any attendees online. We can skip this.
Okay. Third, request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. Please complete the public comment card and submit the completed card to the designated drop box with the assistant to the superintendent. Opportunity for public comment are offered prior to the closed section and at the start of the regular open section. For matter not on the agenda and for the matter on the agenda, the Board of Education reserves the right to add a public comment period prior to any individual item on the agenda. 5 minutes may be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. However, in the event there are more than 4 speakers on the same subject matter, the board president retains the discretion to adjust and limit the time allocated to each speaker to ensure that all wishing to speak will be heard within the 20 minutes allotment. Do we have any public comment card at this time?
We do not have any at this time.
Okay. Okay, let's start from the number 4 board study section. I would like to turn over to the Stephen Choi to introduce our guest speaker who will lead the board through a bond prioritization study section. Please.
Thank you, President Chang, members of the board, Dr. Delatorre, executive team, staff, guests, SMUSD community. We are conducting a study session today on project prioritization and bond financing. And I want to emphasize the term study session. I'm hoping that through this study session this afternoon, we'll have an opportunity to not just provide updates and share information and recommendations for project prioritization, but to also engage with the board to seek guidance and feedback and input. But before we start with the project prioritization, I do want to provide some context and background on why we're here and how we got to where we are. We will be concluding the study session on bond financing. So to start, you may recall this particular diagram, which we showed to the board very early on, immediately after passage of Measure M. And aside from hearing from me today, you'll also be hearing from our bond program management representative, Mr. CJ Nolan from Nolan Construction Services. You'll also be hearing from Chet Wang from Keyent on bond financing. Now, there are others in the room as well. I want to also introduce and mention that we have district leadership as well as our school site principals here. We also have Ms. Pearl Izuka, who is joining us via Zoom as the SMUSD bond consultant. We also have Mr. Jeff Morris, who's the chair of the SMUSD Facilities Advisory Committee, also alumni and parent of the district. And we also have Ms. Kristen Gare, who is representing Piper & Sandler, our underwriter, but also as a parent as well, who will also provide us some information on bond financing and interest rates and all that good stuff later on this afternoon. So just to give us a very high-level overview of how we got to where we are, it's important to remember, and I see a lot of familiar faces in here. As many of you recall, it was an extensive planning process that was well over a year. And the goal of that planning really ultimately culminated in a facilities master plan. And I want to just highlight the fact that the planning process wasn't just about identifying needs for facilities or the conditions of the facilities. It also involved educational visioning. That was a key process in this overall planning process, which really makes the facilities master plan valuable. It's also important to note that through the process, the district engaged in tremendous amount of engagement in developing a long-term facilities master plan, one that could last potentially 10 to 15 years. And I want to again emphasize the fact that it has been an extensive engagement with well over 740 participants consisting of board members here today, our extensive group of experts in the Facilities Advisory Committee, committees in our educational visioning process, as well as the campus vision committees, and of course, our parents and students and communities. I still remember, as you can see from the photos here, the town halls that we held, the meetings from the Facilities Advisory Committee. All of that really contributes to where we are today. And of course, the tangible delivery through that entire process was the facilities master plan. This 117-page document tries to capture that process and is posted on our website on the short URL smusd.us/measure-m. And just a reminder in terms of Measure M performing at the ballot. The ballot language, as you can see here, is very clear. It addresses a lot of the needs, and it was a resounding, very supportive response to Measure M. It was over 71% yes approval on this measure. And many people do ask, what does this measure cover? And it's important to point out that in the Measure M resolution, there is a section called Project List. And this is just a snapshot of some of the key elements of this measure. As you can see, it covers a lot of infrastructure, covers a lot of repair items, roofing. It addresses safety and security, projects related to CTE career technology. It also includes language to prepay or to pay off the district's certificates of participation. That was something that was very intentional in the drafting of the resolution. And for the full resolution, that is also on our website as well. And I just want to conclude this, this kickoff to this session, if you will, with the fact that this measure does require a lot of accountability, which the district is very well prepared to provide. But we are also approaching this Measure M bond program with full transparency. The district has worked closely with the board to form the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. We've seated 7 of those members. There are also annual audits, as well as an annual report to the board that the Oversight Committee will be providing. We have also been providing ongoing updates at every Board of Education meeting. And of course, we have the Measure M latest updates webpage, where we do provide ongoing updates to the general community posted on our website. And we definitely intend to utilize social media and online platforms to communicate the progress that we're making on Measure M. So with that, I do want to introduce and bring up Mr. CJ Nolan, who will walk us through project prioritization.
All right. Good afternoon, President Chang, members of the board, and Dr. De La Torre. My name is CJ Nolan. I'm serving as your bond program manager for Measure M, and I'm going to be presenting on this bond prioritization study session. I do want to emphasize, as Dr. Choi just said, that this is a collaborative process. So your insights or feedback and your input is really valuable for us to ensure that these projects are aligning with the district's long-term goals. Our goal by the end of this presentation is to have a clear direction that allows us to move forward with the design for some of these projects. I wanted to start off by acknowledging the work that was done by our Facilities Advisory Committee and is demonstrated in the Facilities Master Plan. So through the Facilities Master Plan, there was a robust process engaged with various stakeholders from the community, our school sites, and the board, where they separated our projects into two tiers. Tier 1, focusing on our core learning spaces and modernizing those spaces, and other safety improvements in the district. The CTE career and technical programs are also in tier 1. And tier 2 includes some of our larger projects at the high school, focusing on athletics. For the Facility Advisory Committee prioritized scope of work, I wanted to give a new perspective on how those priority tiers 1 and 2 look. So if you look at tier 1, you can see that the dollars allocated for each school site are primarily at our elementary schools. This is Carver has 35 million and Valentine with 58 million. You can see the priority tier 2 is the majority of the tier 2 work is at our high school, which is those athletic facilities that I previously mentioned. As the facilities master plan was drafted, it was drafted in 2024 dollars. So this is important when you consider escalation. Over time, escalation is the increase of cost to build these projects or construct these buildings. So as years go by, costs go up, and we need to account for those in some way. In addition to escalation, we also have interim housing. Interim housing will be the housing that is required to house students and provide classroom spaces while we are constructing new buildings. As we move forward through this presentation, we'll see that some of these new buildings are in the place of existing buildings, so we will have to provide interim housing for that period. As the facilities master plan was drafted, they drafted it in 2 categories, with 2/3 of the bond dollars being allocated to projects hard and soft costs. I typically define hard costs as things you can touch and soft costs as things you can't. The other 1/3 of the cost allowance is to account for that escalation and the interim housing that I previously mentioned. So as we move forward with prioritizations, I want to really focus on that 1/3, because in order for us to get to those tier 2 projects, we need to do our best at mitigating the spending that goes towards escalation or interim housing. We want to pull some of that 1/3 so that we're able to do the tier 2 projects. So just to recap the key considerations that were taken for prioritizing projects. As we were drafting the FMP, we really were focused on student impact, like what improves those core learning environments, what supports our kindergarten TK expansion, then safety and security, those pickups and drop-off locations, site security fencing, and seismic or aging infrastructure risks. And then we also took community and stakeholder input. So this is what was reflected in the community through all the surveys, town halls, and all of that extensive process that has gone on for the last year. So with all of those being considerations for drafting the facilities master plan, now we want to cover some considerations for the implementation of the facilities master plan. The first being the facility condition and urgency. This will cover your end-of-life systems that could be HVAC, roofing, electrical, any deferred maintenance backlog, or just items that have a high cost of inaction or failure. So if you think of something that might fail and could close school or have a significant impact to the learning environment, those are projects that we want to prioritize and take care of relatively quickly. The next category I have is financial leverage. So which sites are eligible for state matching funds? Which projects and phasing will lower our interim housing costs or mitigate disruption to the education process? And then also mitigating escalation costs. So what are our high dollar projects that we should be designing now so that we're able to build and construct them earlier and stay closer to those 2024 dollars and not have future escalation price them out of our bond dollars. The last category I have is the immediate impact projects. So these are design ready projects or projects that can be bundled efficiently, have minimal classroom or site disruptions, and do not require intensive phasing to occur. So as we jump in, I'm going to start off with our district-wide and early impact projects. And like I said, the considerations for these type of projects, they address the most visible and high-use areas for students and staff. They align with our facilities master plan, top community priorities. They require minimal design, or they have pre-approved designs through DSA. They avoid costly interim housing, and they improve just the overall safety, wellness, and student experience. These projects are really designed to build momentum as we start our bond program. So from reviewing the facilities master plan, walking the sites, I have included a list on the left-hand side of some recommended early impact projects. And this is really where we want to have an open dialogue and review some of these projects and see how they align with the district's current long-term goals. The first recommended early impact project that is listed is the Valentine Elementary School and Carver Elementary School upper grade playground replacements. While this project will still require DSA approval, it is a project that is not in the way of future projects, and it can be done relatively quickly using pre-approved design. And just due to the overall condition of the existing play structures, it seems like it would meet an urgent safety need. The next, there's any comments, feel free to interject at any time. Yep.
Okay, for the district-wide HVAC replacement and control, I think before we already have a project for air condition. So
That's correct.
that project will continue to fit into this one, or we are separate?
Yeah, this past summer, we had the opportunity to replace several units at Valentine Elementary as well as Huntington Middle School using ESSER 3 funds. This will address a lot of the units that were not replaced. So there are still needs related to HVAC, and replacing those HVAC units would be considered an early
How
impact.
about the trailer in the Valentine? Is that the time, they very hard? Did you install the new unit or no?
I don't believe we replaced the HVAC units at the portable units. Right. Right.
So those trailer eventually will.
Yeah, I think CJ is going to go into what we're going to do with the portable units. He has a very good plan as well as an animation that will show us where those portables could be relocated for the purposes of interim housing. So we will, good question.
I've been patient.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to address the first thing that we're on right now, the playgrounds. I know at Carver, the TK playground is a top concern because they don't have age appropriate playground equipment at all right now, really. So does that fit into the master plan and not disrupting future projects?
It absolutely does. As we go through, we're going to go through each site specifically and the phasing that will occur. The projects that were listed here really do not require phasing, or they don't require work to happen prior to these projects occurring. But we clearly do understand that the TK and kindergarten needs are very present. And as we go through to those sites, you'll see they're listed quite high. I'm just going to move through the list, and like I said, feel free to interject as you have any input or feedback. The district-wide campus security fencing and access controls from the facilities master plan. This was heavily mentioned, and it was also noticed on our walkthrough as well. In addition, we have our district-wide roof assessments and replacements. So we've already contracted roofing contractors to provide an assessment of the district's roofs. Once they provide that assessment, we'll have areas that we can tackle quickly. It's recommended that we improve entire buildings' roof systems at the same time. But this work also typically needs to be scheduled over a summer break. So we want to get ahead of it, so we're ready to start that work immediately next summer. And then we also have the district-wide HVAC replacements and controls. This would be just replacing our existing HVAC units and not adding new HVAC units. This would not require DSA approval and is something we could move forward with relatively quickly. The next project we have, which was mentioned quite frequently in the facilities master plan, was the lunch shelters and outdoor dining. While this still will require DSA approval, the designs are often pre-approved and have a quicker review process with DSA. This next one, the district-wide restroom modernizations, this was probably one of the most unified and heavily mentioned areas in the facilities master plan for the community and other stakeholders. This will require DSA, but because it was so heavily emphasized in the facility master plan, we wanted to be able to target specific restrooms and tackle those immediately if that was part of the board's direction. And then the last recommended early impact project listed was the San Marino High School Medical Arts CTE Pathway Project. And this project was really listed to maximize the impact for students that are nearing graduation. As you could see, the bond dollars for Tier 1 and Tier 2. And Tier 1 is primarily the elementary schools, and Tier 2 is where a lot of the high school projects are. As we are prioritizing these projects, we are prioritizing Tier 1 projects, and that would mean that the high school doesn't have very many large projects until we are able to save some of those Tier 2 dollars to roll forward. So it would be a good way to really maximize the impact for all students to focus on the CTE pathway at the high school as well. There were also other notable mentioned projects like the outdoor play fields and hard court resurfacings. This is a project that sometimes can be difficult to do right at the beginning because you will have active construction going on at these campuses over the next several years. There are measures that we can take to improve the existing quality, but in terms of a full replacement, we would recommend doing that after construction is complete. Additional items include marquees, scoreboard replacements, and some counseling and wellness center upgrades.
What does DSA stand for?
DSA is the division of the state architect. So they have a heavy review process throughout any construction project for a school. And really because of that review process, when we are thinking of early impact projects, we want to find projects that have an accelerated review process or don't require that review. But normally DSA is reviewing things like fire, life safety, access, and just other structural components as well.
Just for the curiosity, I mean, after we get the approval from DSA, do we need to still work with the CD to get approval same time, or is it independent?
Oh, with CTE?
Yeah, I mean, city of San Marino.
Oh, the city? No, we do not have to work with the city.
Okay, all right.
So DSA is in place of the city review of plans. So like on the private world, the city would normally review plans. And for school districts, it's going to be the division of the state architect.
Okay, I got it.
So for those recommended early impact project, when we anticipate to finish, 1 year, 2 year?
I believe these are all projects that we would be trying to tackle in that first bond issuance. So I would say over the next 3 years, depending on a prioritization from the board and direction from you, we could prioritize any of these projects in any order, but we would really be moving on a fast as possible timeline with these projects. Some of them are limited to the school year, where like roof replacements, for example, can really only be tackled over the summer. But we would be tackling these immediately.
But for the roofing project, have we ever considered like a solar roof or solar panel to compare with it, or we haven't?
I can't speak for San Marino specifically considering solar roof panels, but with the division of the state architect's review process, the process of installing solar on a roof can become quickly overwhelming in terms of these additional structural supports and additional structure required to support them. Most often you see solar as like individual shade structures over parking lots or like fields.
I see.
All right. So I also included as a handout the facilities master plans before and after for each school site. So if you go to Carver Elementary School, you could see the before the facilities master plan on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side after the facilities master plan. As we are looking at these projects and prioritizing the phasing of these projects, one of the things we're really trying to do is mitigate interim housing and also mitigate escalation costs. So by mitigating both of those costs, we'll be able to pull part of that 1/3 contingency and roll it to future tier 2 projects. The first project on this list that really unlocks the potential for future projects is our new TK classrooms and play area. And you can see that on the upper right portion of the map. On our facilities master plan, it's in this area, but as you can see on the areas for exploration, typically you would see your TK and kindergarten areas near each other. And we would definitely like to explore if there's an option to maybe bring that TK area closer to where the existing kindergarten area already is. So with this prioritization, when we start the design process with an architect, that is one area we will definitely be exploring. So with those 5 new TK classrooms, that really opens up some of the portables that are on the left-hand side that you can see are being used for the existing TK classrooms. So as we are building new classrooms and we have portables that are currently housing those students, those classrooms will now be free to be a flexible interim housing space. So that is how we're combating interim housing costs, is by building new structures and then keeping the portables for the bond program so that we're able to use that space while we modernize or do other projects moving forward. The next project that we have is the 2 new kinder classrooms and replacing that play area on the lower left. So you can see on the lower left, you have the 2 new kinder classrooms, and that would actually go right in the building footprint is actually right in where the previous TK classrooms were. So as I was saying, to avoid interim housing costs, you have to strategically phase these projects so that you have housing throughout the bond program and throughout construction. The third project we have phased is the new 5th grade classrooms. Now, this is a project that is to replace the existing portable classrooms. This might be another way we could mitigate those interim housing costs by maybe not putting them exactly in the same building footprint as the existing modular classrooms, and then keeping those modular classrooms for the next 2 to 3 years to serve as interim housing as we phase the classroom modernizations in. Moving on to the phase 1 classroom modernizations. On the bottom portion, it would be the bottom row of classrooms in the administration area. We would be doing a first phase of classroom modernizations. Now, depending on how many of those modular classrooms we're able to keep on our campus, we would be able to do this work partially during the year if needed, or we could do this work over the summer. So we really want to phase these classroom modernizations into bite-sized chunks so that we're not impacting the entire campus, and we have that flexibility to provide learning spaces to all the students while we're modernizing classrooms. The phase 2 classroom modernizations would be the upper classrooms on the northern row of classrooms, which we would be doing the same thing. Now, with those classroom modernizations completed, that is when we would be looking to remove our interim housing and remove the existing portables from the campus. And the last project we would be doing is our play fields and hardcourt improvements. So with this schedule, we would be looking to solicit architects and begin the design process for the new TK classrooms initially, and then be moving through the new kinder and then to the new 5th grade classrooms. That wraps it up for Carver. So I just wanted to take this moment, if you guys have any questions, concerns, or feedback before I move on to the next site.
What is a comment on the cover principle?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chang. So we met with Mr. Nolan and I think the facilities we did a really thorough job of the things and stuff that I appreciate over the field. As President Bill's question about the TK areas made a lot of sense relative to combining the Kindred and TK in one area, because when you gave the Ball's experience, you talked about the good TK up where the tennis courts are now. You have to make a unified path for the little guys to go all the way through. So some readjustments make total sense, and I appreciate the expertise and the experience to and envision that. Harvard is a beautiful campus, and I think these things will go a long ways to helping it live for years beyond the time that projects get implemented. So I look forward to give the student.
How about Dr. Rita on the curriculum related to design?
Well, I think, thank you, President Chang. I think I very much appreciated being part of the process as we from start to this date and looking at really what our physical environment looks like with regards to the curriculum and innovation that we're bringing to our students. I think that's a really important piece, and really looking at the design of the classroom and creating flexible spaces and flexible classrooms is going to be key to allow our students to continue participating in like project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, and really having state-of-the-art classrooms and equipment to support that type of learning.
I also want to include that the facilities master plan really is it serves as a starting point for a lot of these projects. And as we begin design, we'll be in coordination with site administrators and the district to really finalize the best location for each project. Just because certain locations on the are indicated on the facilities master plan does not mean that we may see new information as we go through design that indicate a different location would be better suited.
Yeah, I appreciate, revisiting this site plan, because I feel like I know there's a lot of constraints with setbacks and
Easement.
seismic, all these different things that we're working with, but I do think that there's probably a more efficient way of laying out this campus and less disruptive. And I understand that this is a starting point and they got all the elements in,
Mhm.
which is important, but I think that we would be eager to see something little like reworked a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. So as we begin that design process, we'll definitely be working with the district to make that happen.
Just curiosity, though, can kindergarten and TK can share the playground?
So the actual play apparatus, usually they have different target age frames, but a lot of times they will share the same play area. So the same fenced in area they could possibly share,
I
but you'll usually see two different play apparatuses.
I see.
Stuart, oftentimes at Carver, there's parent concern regarding traffic and how everything's going. And I notice here the drop off, right? The new one. And then I'm wondering if there's any other areas that we can look at that would have allowed us to have access to alleviate the traffic or somehow in some way redirect, like are they coming from north, south? Is there a different path in which we can lay out? Like right near where the play field ends and you're coming down towards where it says TK and now the structures, right?
Mhm.
Okay, there couldn't be a pathway entry, like a separate, how Valentine has their separate circle for drop off. Was there a way in which to look at something for Carver like that?
There's been a lot of traffic studies for Carver, and traffic is low off road, say we go more as opposed to where it's going now. That was problematic for safety reasons. A lot has been done relative to that. On that, facilities advisory committee looked at this. originally they had kind of plotted out part of there by the TPA area, which quickly done something to be a little, because people would be backing right into the car line. So some kind of pass through and drop off there. I know we initially sat down, Mr. Nolan to talk about that and absolutely open. That would make those things more efficient. Although the process really does go pretty quickly, it is very, very helpful in terms of getting people to flow and have this come through and go through on a daily basis. So it really doesn't. It is an aggravation. Anything we can do to make it more efficient.
Essentially, the facilities master plan gets all of those ideas out on paper. And as we begin the design process, we can really in-depth look at what the best traffic flow solution could be for this campus. And that could be something that is packaged with TK,
Yeah.
or we'd be working with the site administrators and the district to really narrow down on.
Yeah, Polly actually has a great drop off. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but they have, you know, such a short space to drop people off that they have 3 lanes and people working them to crosswalk in between. And it's very well organized and safe. And it just moves so fast. So if there's any way to widen, you know, just at drop off point, it would be great.
That is definitely something we can look at through the design process, and that's the feedback that's really critical as we start that.
One of the things that executive team has mentioned, being Dr. Manager, is the possibility of even looking at staggering start times and end times, so that you don't have, you know, all of the parents in line at once. So there are a variety of different ways that we can look at this and be creative in solving it. We appreciate that issue being raised as it is an ongoing dilemma.
We just don't want to make it harder for parents with multiple
We understand
grades.
that too.
Yeah.
So that's another, you know, it's nothing is ever easy, right? It's all very complex and there are layers to this issue. But we're looking at it from all angles, not just the facilities perspective. So I just want to.
Mrs. Lam, do you have any question on the problem?
No, I don't have questions on credit.
All right.
Okay, keep going.
Moving on to Valentine Elementary School. Now, if you remember from our tiered list, this was one of the campuses that had the most dollars allocated towards it from the facilities master plan. And really, one of the first things I would recommend phasing is the relocation of the 6 portable classrooms. Now, when you look at Valentine's before and after on the facility master plan, you can see that there's a new 2-story building that goes right in place of where those 6 portable, 6 modular classrooms are. So what we would like to do is to, instead of purchasing new interim housing, we would like to repurpose the existing interim or existing modular classrooms and use it as interim housing. And the location that would most likely be ideal is the location that we will have to grade for the future NPR classrooms. It is also closer to Huntington Middle School to serve as interim housing for modernization of Huntington as well. So these 6 portable modular classrooms really will provide a lot of flexibility if we're able to repurpose them instead of getting rid of them. And it'll save us quite a bit of money on interim housing as well. As you can see, the new 2-story building at Valentine Elementary School is located exactly where those 6 modular classrooms were previously located. And with the construction of a new building, we also have increased flexibility or more classroom space to begin modernizations throughout the rest of the campus.
Question. So what is the regulation in the elementary school for the 2-story? Which grade they can?
Upper elementary, so it would be your 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Yes.
But is that once you complete, is that you have to avoid the TK or K to drop to?
Yeah, they cannot be on the 2nd floor, TKK 1st and 2nd. It must be on the 1st floor.
Okay.
And really the way these projects for Valentine Elementary School are phased is to provide as much additional classroom space so that we have the flexibility during the classroom modernizations. With the second and third phase being the new two-story building and then the new TK and kindergarten classroom area, these can really go concurrently, but it may be a lot of work happening at the sites at one time. So these projects both add classroom space, but we would recommend phasing the new two-story building first because it provides more flexibility, and then the new TK and kindergarten play area and classrooms. But they could really be done interchangeably if that is how the district would like to proceed.
So I have a question about TK. This is sort of for Dr. Richter. Do we have enough enrollment to justify 10 sections of TK?
10 sections?
Yeah, because we have
Oh, for
5
schools.
Yeah, yeah.
We are right in the middle of enrollment right now, registration and enrollment, and typically we see a big surge in TK and K enrollment in midsummer. So June and July, we have quite a few already pre-registered and completing the enrollment
We have another
process.
younger kids are coming in now, right?
Yes,
And then
age eligibility is pushed back through September 1st, so they have to be 5 before September, for September 1st.
and we have currently 4 at each school or 3 at each school.
We have 3 at each school currently.
Okay.
So with us prioritizing the Carver Elementary School TK, hopefully that would be able to alleviate some of those concerns
Yeah.
so that we're able to appropriately phase Valentine's.
And that was my line of thinking is if we do one school and we do the full 5, we have overflow from Valentine that goes there at the time until it's really justified. I just don't see like doing all 10 at once in my opinions.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna talk about the ratio.
Yeah.
So the TK ratio, next year would be changing unless the governor changes it in his main revise. So instead of having 1 adult to every 12 students, you can have 2 adults in the classroom with a class of 24, it would be 10 to 1.
Okay.
Yes.
So
That's
a
pushing the
consideration.
numbers too, yeah.
Yes, that's pushing the numbers and the number of classrooms that we have to have space for. But moreover, we also need to be thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what we want our school district to look like. And one of the things that we have been talking about on and off at this district for, the last 20 years, as I can recall, is wouldn't it be wonderful to have a preschool program that can serve as a feeder into our schools? Because when young families move into San Marino, if they put their kid in a private preschool, they get to know those private preschool parents. And sometimes they go the private school route instead of the San Marino public school route. And as we know, based on our previous experience, after having been able to bring back some of those private school families whose schools burned down in January due to the fires, they didn't know that San Marino Unified had such wonderful programs and facilities until they got here, and they were very happy and they're going to stay. So Dr. Ritter has many stories about that. They're resident students. Had they started here, they would have known that. They probably would have gone the public school route. And so I just think that that's something that we should be thinking about to build for the future and to try and retain resident students in San Marino. Just something to think about. But we don't have the facilities to do that now. Our facilities were never designed for transitional kindergarten. That's something that is very new, universal transitional kindergarten.
Whole
So-
extra grade.
Yeah, and those classroom spaces need to be designed to support children at that developmental stage and age. You need to have restrooms that are in very close proximity to those kiddos. So there's just a whole different requirement for children of that age. Even the teacher credentialing requirement is different for children that age because their developmental needs are different. So I just wanted to plant that seed because many of my predecessors, going back to Jack Rose, used to talk about, it would be really smart for us to have a preschool, but we never had the facilities to be able to do that. And Dr. Troy's been around a long time, knows that too. Who'd have thought?
So once we have those new TK and kindergarten areas in place, and we have those existing modular classrooms repurposed as interim housing, that's really when we want to start phasing in our modernization. So we split Valentine Elementary School into two modernizations, with one being the eastern portion of classrooms and the second phase being the west portion of classrooms. Once those modernizations are complete for both phases, then is when we would begin removing the modular classrooms and moving forward with the new NPR and food service facility for Valentine Elementary School. That wraps up Valentine. So if there's any other questions, comments?
I have a question. For these kindergarten, is this just blocking it out? They're not all individual buildings, right? That's just like blocks for space on a site plan?
Yeah, and it's a little bit hard to tell. There's actually restrooms in between. It's just really small.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that restroom requirement that Dr. De La Torre was referring to previously. They're usually connected by restrooms that serve both of the classrooms. That's been found to be a fairly efficient way to design it, but the drawing is just quite small.
Before we move on to the other school, I just want to mention one more thing, that we don't often talk about, but, we have the last two bonds, most of the money, was actually spent on the high school. And Carver had that big, beautiful, library that is still amazing to this day. So when we talk about, well, you know, what it looks like in our facilities master plan, most of the money is being driven to the elementaries. That may be because the elementaries have been, facility wise, not as well cared for in terms of our bond money over the years. So we need to invest in our elementary campuses, and we also have more children attending both elementary schools than we have had in the history of our school district. So I think that's an important factor. We have more wear and tear because we have more little feet breaking up and down the hallways and going into classrooms and going into the cafeteria, and Valentine doesn't even have a cafeteria. So I just wanted to make sure that we all were reminded that most of the money from the prior two bonds was directed to the high school in Carver.
And before I move on to Huntington Middle School, I want to emphasize on the location of those repurposed modular classrooms for interim housing is strategic, so that when we move over to Huntington Middle School, those could potentially be used for interim housing at Huntington as well. Again, as much of that 1/3 we claw back and do not spend on interim housing or escalation, we're able to put forward to those tier 2 projects, which would go to the high school and Huntington Middle School as well. But in terms of tier 1 project for Huntington Middle School, it really is just the classroom modernizations. The classrooms there are more classrooms at Huntington. So we did split this into 3 phases. The phasing for this particular campus is something that we're gonna have to dive into a little bit more detail with the site administrators to see what would possibly work best for them. And Valentine Elementary School plays a big factor in how we want to phase Huntington Middle School as well. So essentially the 2 elementary schools are purposefully phased ahead of the middle school and ahead of Huntington Middle School and the high school for that part. So we have the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 classroom modernizations. And here is the fully implemented facility master plan. One of the things I can say is that the hard court resurfacing and the play fields for Huntington Middle School, since there are not any new construction related projects in tier 1 or tier 2 for Huntington Middle School, the hard court resurfacing is something that we could look at doing earlier for the middle school, where that isn't so much the case at the other sites. And then lastly, we have the San Marino High School, which is our classroom modernizations, but in tier 1 specifically, we're only going to be modernizing our rooms with the greatest need only. That is just because we're trying to meet the dollars available for the bond. But as we move through the bond and we're able to take back more and more of that 1/3 that was allocated towards escalation and interim housing, we will be able to do more classrooms as part of modernization, which is just another reason why you would want to phase the high school and the middle school somewhere towards the end so that you're able to efficiently allocate those saved dollars into more modernization and greater impact for the high school and middle school. Another area that I would like to explore for the high school specifically are other CTE grant opportunities, just to allow for additional funding for the site. And then the last area that I wanted to, oh, sorry, and here's the fully implemented plan for San Marino High School as well. You can see a lot of our tier 2 projects near the athletic facilities. So with minimizing our interim housing and phasing things in a way that we are spending more dollars on new projects sooner, we're hopeful that we can turn that savings into our tier 2 projects for some of the athletic facilities at San Marino High School.
Have we start to explore the city grant?
We are just starting that process, yes.
So as we go through that process, we will begin working with Ed Services and Dr. Choi to see what programs fit best for San Marino.
Do we have an idea how big the fund?
There are a couple different grants that we are aware of. for
Is
CTE
that
funding.
based on ADA or based on the program or based on?
I don't believe it's based on AD. Some of the ones that I've researched are not based on ADA, and some of them are significantly large grants if awarded. There are a number of, like there's a CTIG grant, there's the, we just looked at it, Golden State Pathways or another grant that's something along those lines. And they offer a substantial amount of funding if you are awarded that grant. So those are two that we're looking at, especially as we look to expand our medical arts academy, whether we're gonna look at expanding other CTE programs or adding on to our medical arts academy as a CTE pathway.
And then the last slide I had that is probably going to be covered in much more detail in the presentation after me is just our Measure M budget forecast and our considerations for bond issuances as we move forward through this bond program. Bond proceeds must typically be expended within the 3 years of issuances, so you don't enter arbitrage for the bond, which requires that cash flow planning must align with the project phasing and scheduling for our projects. So we want to make sure that the bonds that we are issuing, we're going to be able to spend within that 3 years. Another interesting thing with Measure M is many of our larger high cost projects are categorized as tier 2. So as we are going through bond issuances, the later bond issuances may be larger depending on the savings and the feasibility of those tier 2 projects. Construction bond expenditures typically follow a bell curve pattern with lower spending early and higher spending during the execution phase of these construction projects. Like it said, the design and planning phases require minimal cash flow, with the execution phase ramping up construction costs. If bond funded projects are spread over a longer timeline, that traditionally flattens the curve, and it becomes more gradual in terms of spending. And then vice versa, a faster implementation schedule compresses it, and you'll have more of a bell-shaped curve for your budget forecast for the bond issuances specifically. Sorry. And with that being said, that wraps up my presentation on the prioritization of bond projects. So just to go back to where we started, we're hoping that this aligns with the board's long-term vision for the district, and we're able to start the design process and soliciting architects for some of these initial projects and those early impact projects as well.
Yeah, I would like to see the concession stand bathrooms at the high school be a part of that modernization for the top tier priorities. I mean, district-wide restrooms. It's
Yeah.
embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
So I agree with you 100%. You've been saying that to me
That's
for a
like-
very long time. And I have been saying that to you guys for a very long time. So we were talking about, you know, engaging in some of that work over the summer. Is that correct? The modernization of the bathrooms?
It would, we'd have to look at those restrooms specifically. There might be some things.
Needs to be done. Mr. Cardenas was telling me that it's been freshly painted.
Freshly painted, new stalls, and
Oh, I haven't been in there.
Yeah, so you, yeah.
Well, how long ago?
few months.
So we have done some work in that restroom. You might-
I mean,
Yeah.
they're kind of beyond that.
We hear you.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, and so,
Yeah, it needs, it could just do like a surface refresh and maybe not part of this, but like,
I was hoping that we could get some of that restroom work done over the summer, if at all possible, but like you said, depending on the work that needs, the scope of the job, right? I get that, but we need to do something, even the students have brought that issue.
and the worse that it looks, the less respect that they show it. And so I feel like, you know, when you're in a
Mhm.
nicer environment, it's just sort of natural to respect it more and to maintain it at a higher level.
Yep.
They just don't, you know, create such a mess. Additionally, the seats in the stadium, I know that's of concern, a safety concern. Is it something we can
Yeah.
discuss?
CJ, Gil and I went out to the high school to take a closer look at these seats, and I am more concerned that it is a safety
Yeah, for
hazard
sure.
more than, so that is something that we will prioritize as a safety related project.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would fall under that like deferred maintenance backlog type project. So that's something that can be tackled relatively quickly.
I have a question, generally speaking. Kind of metrics are we using to account for how long the planning process and the execution process will take in terms of each campus? So I see like some of them is like over the summer, we could probably schedule something, but is it planned to be finished in the summer, like a certain project or?
Yeah, so typically, like for roofing replacements, for example, you would plan during the springtime and have that project start usually the first day of summer. And our summers have gotten shorter and shorter over the years. So we really have to be efficient in ensuring that it's completed by the start of school. Any project that wouldn't start and complete, but over the summer break would require interim housing, which is why in the phasing, we have the projects phased in such a way that we're able to utilize some of our existing portables.
So to clarify, the interim housing is kind of the contingency plan if the timeliness of a project is not completed.
Well, some of the projects just, it's not feasible to complete over the summer. So you do need, it can serve as a contingency plan, but sometimes interim housing is required regardless.
And just one more comment on just the structure of this. Just an awareness of if we do these smaller projects up front instead of bigger projects, the money saved on the 1/3 is what we could actually use for smaller projects later.
So just to clarify, these smaller projects would be going on during the design process for the bigger projects. So the initial phasing of the other sites, the design process for those new buildings often takes quite a bit longer. So they would actually be going concurrently with these early impact projects.
It's just like with play equipment.
Mhm.
That is money that you save and you can spend that at the end instead of spending it first.
So are you talking about escalation specifically or?
In the sense of the escalation, the thought costs and all these things, I mean,
Yeah, so.
you're never going to recoup enough savings from that 1/3 to pay for those tier 2. I mean, they're just double the tier 1, basically. So it's that, I don't know how we piece those out either, because they are big projects.
So the way the facilities master plan was budgeted, they actually budgeted the 2024 dollars. So the tier 1 is only $140 million. Where tier 2, the projects are 127 million. So yeah, it'd be a tall order to do both of those large projects. But there is definitely some feasibility and possibility to tackle one or a good portion of some of those tier two projects by saving.
Some of the bigger projects you can't, like, there's no stopping point, kind of, if you're gonna build a big gym. I mean, you have to build the gym.
Right.
I mean,
So that's where we'd kind of have to revisit and through updating the board, seek guidance and feedback as we go through the bond program, which is kind of why we have it phased with the high school towards the end. More phasing. I hope that answered the question.
it is, it's just, I think some of these things that are in priority, the top priority, like a playground equipment, although important, isn't as tier one as I don't think it's tier one. Playground.
And then I have a, sorry about like about this.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. But I have a different but similar question related to like the budget forecast. So this bell curve where it starts off with like smaller planning and execution projects, what kind of a number as we move on from each section to each section that eventually, expends all of the 200 so million?
It really depends on the length of time or duration of your bond issuances, which I believe is being presented at a future board meeting. But the longer say you have issuances over 10 years, that bell curve becomes almost flat because you're just spending equal amounts of money over the 3-year period. But the more compressed you make that bell curve, the more money you're spending. So say you took out a 50 million issuance at the beginning, then maybe your next issuance might be 75 million because the designing and that front cost or soft costs are not nearly as expensive as the actual material and the building itself. Does that make sense?
So are we expecting kind of like different options in terms of the forecast of how it would be broken down, like whether it is likely going to be the typical bell curve or a different sort of model that might happen?
So I think we were looking at prioritization to help drive that decision in terms of what the dollar amounts of the issuances are. And we may also wait to hear from our financing experts to kind of shed some light on that as well. But the goal is for our May 27th meeting to present what those issuances might look like, or at least the first issuance. But we wanted to get feedback and input from the board in terms of how you feel about this particular approach with financing.
Thank you.
There's no plan for the district office though, right?
It was not included as
We're
part
gonna
of
have a
this
nice
group.
office for the Mr. Joseph Chang.
Yeah, those are usually rough projects for
I
administrators.
see, I see.
That might be tier 3.
Yeah, tier
Tier
three.
3.
Take away stuff.
There'll be quite a few tiers before that. So I think Keegan was going to answer what Joanna's really asking, because I think we were initially talking, Chris had said like 4 issuances of 50, but that's not really reality, right? I mean,
It depends.
that's just like a,
They could be adjusted as we go through the bond process, but if you were spreading it over a longer period of time and going at a slower rate, that might make sense. But then you're also losing dollars towards escalation and other things. So by doing more in a less period of time, you're gonna have more of that pronounced bell curve than you would if you did a 10-year series of issuances.
Okay, thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
Like to invite Chet to come up and present on bond financing.
Thank you, and good afternoon, President Chang, members of the board, Dr. De La Torre, and executive team. So this is the finance presentation that will review some of the variables that will inform as Dr. Choi mentioned, the sizing of the first issuance of bonds. And then so we'll review your assessed valuation. My colleague here, Kristen, will review the bond market, and then we'll look at next steps. So Just a recap on, you've heard a lot of information on the projects from Mr. Nolan and, the work from the Facilities Advisory Committee with Mr. Morris. And so that's going to inform one part of the equation, which is the scope, the cost, and the timing. And then on the other side of our equation is the financing constraints. How do we generate the proceeds to pay for the debt service, which will service the amount that you decide to issue for the various priorities? So based on that, we'll look at your assessed valuation, interest rates, tax rates, and some of the legal parameters that we have to abide by. So the first one on assessed valuation, this is the value of all taxable property within district boundaries, primarily residential properties. You can see that the district's assessed value has never had a decline, going back to 1985, not during the recession in the mid-90s, not during the Great Recession. So in the most recent fiscal year, your assessed valuation grew 4.6% to $9.2 billion. And one of the an interesting fact is, even though homes in your community might sell for $2 million, $3 million, $5 million plus, the median assessed value of a single family home within district boundaries is $1,395,000. So that's what drives the growth in assessed value, where if properties change hands, what was once $1.4 million now gets assessed at $2.9 million. And we'll look at the interest rates before going into other variables.
Thanks, Chet. Good afternoon, members of the board, members of cabinet, and Superintendent De La Torre. Kristen Gare with Piper Sandler. We are a bond underwriter. I focus exclusively with school districts in California and community colleges. We wanted to give you a quick backdrop on the interest rate environment. And I think the two charts that you see, one is a 60-year history, and then we zoom into a 5-year history of what's called the Bond Buyer General Obligation Bond Index. And what that index is it's a index of the borrowing cost for a 20-year financing of a general obligation bond, and that's what the district would issue that was authorized under Measure M. For a AA rated, and I'll go into credit ratings, but a AA rated borrowing for about 20 years. So it's similar to what the district is contemplating. We show the movement of that interest rate over a 60-year period on the left-hand side, and then zooming in on the 5-year history, really more relevant to us. We all lived through the historically low interest rate environment during the pandemic. And then we started to see a lot of inflation in 2022. In March of 2022 is when the Federal Reserve started raising their short-term interest rates. They were as low as 0 to 0.25%. They raised them 11 different times, all the way up to 5.25% through July of 2023. Then took a pause as those interest rate increases started impacting the economy. Things started to slow down a bit. They started to lower rates in the fall of last year. They lowered rates 3 different times. Now, they only impact the short-term rates, but long-term rates kind of followed suit. They lowered rates 3 different times in 2024, bringing that short-term rate down to a higher end range of 4.5%. Since the beginning of 2025, the Federal Reserve has elected to keep rates steady, and that's been in large part to what we've all seen unfold on a national level with the current administration. And then if we zoom in even more on that right-hand side in the 5-year history, you can see sort of a sharp rise in interest rates, and that's really reflective of what's transpired over the past couple of months. In particular, of late, the announcements with regards to tariffs, trade tensions, and the potential economic uncertainty has caused interest rates to rise. In fact, since Liberation Day, interest rates are up about 0.25%. So we are in a higher interest rate environment, but if we take a 30,000-foot view from that and look at the last 60 years, we're still within historical averages. If we do have a lot of school bonds. San Marino School District is one of 200 school districts that have passed bonds. So there's a lot of school districts coming into the bond market. there's a lot of competing supply. I think what's great about the potential of timing with respect to a bond sale, this summer is when we usually see investors receiving a lot of money from bond payments that are already outstanding. So money to put to work that investors have to invest in bonds, which helps drive down the cost. If we look at what one of the unique and great aspects of San Marino Unified, it's the district's strong credit ratings. So credit ratings, much like when you go get a car loan or home mortgage, they look at your credit score. This is effectively the same concept. There are 3 rating agencies that give credit ratings, but the district has 2 outstanding ratings from the leading agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's. The district's Moody's rating is the higher of the 2 at AA1. That's 1 notch below a AAA, the highest rating. And then the second rating is from Standard & Poor's at what we call AA flat. The Moody's rating was upgraded in 2023. And I brought their credit report. It's really, really positive. They talked about the district's credit strengths being the robust reserve and liquidity levels, the exceptional resident income and wealth levels, which Chet touched on in terms of the sizable tax base and just our community, the health of our overall community. And then importantly, the strong local community support and the approval of the parcel taxes. So other revenue sources outside of just being reliant on state funds. These are all really important credit metrics because the rating agencies, you need a credit rating on these bonds because the investors, they're going to read these reports and make a determination whether or not they put in an order for San Marino School District bonds. And much like when you're selling your home, the more orders that you have on your bonds or the more offers that you have on your home, the more we can in turn lower interest rates. So the great and very strong credit ratings are a true credit positive. And I guess one last final point, just with respect to the current school bond market, while we've seen all this interest rate volatility, we are in a higher interest rate environment, a lot of schools coming to market. We were just in the market earlier this week. And actually, Keygent was a advisor as well for a school district up in the Bay Area. Very similarly, they have a AAA rating. They're a basic aid district, but they also have a parcel tax. So there are a lot of similarities. They sold 57 million and they received 264 million in orders. So 4 times the amount of orders for their bonds than they had bonds to offer. This is a great position to be in. They had 43 unique investors. So all that's to say, and in the end, we're able to lower interest rates after a successful sale. And all that's to say, in a highly competitive environment, high interest rate environment, we're in a great position. San Marino School District is in a great position, given how strong this district is and the high credit quality.
Okay, so
Can I
we
ask you a
talk-
quick question?
Yes.
Is there a way for us to get it up to AAA or no? Not really.
So the way that you're rated, even though the risk of default of your bonds would be 0%,
Yeah.
the rating agencies rate you against a median scale of other districts. So as Kristen mentioned, the district up in the Bay Area is basic aid, whereas you are an LCFF district. And that really does limit your upward mobility into the AAA. So AA1 really is the highest that we see LCFF districts. Great question. So we talked about the assessed valuation. We talked about interest rates, and we'll get into the tax rates. And just as a bit of background, as you know, the district has 2 prior bond measures, the one from 1996 and the one from 2000 for 34 million and 18 million. And you might recall the Measure M bonds were structured as a no tax increase, which was to coincide with the expiration of the 96 and 2000 bond measures. Graphically, you can see this on slide 7, where absent Measure M coming in, your bond tax expired in the 24-25 fiscal year. So Measure M would start its first tax in the 25-26 fiscal year. And you heard Mr. Nolan mention earlier, whenever you spend your bond proceeds, the IRS has rules for when you issue tax exempt bonds. Tax exempt bonds are supposed to serve the public good. And to serve the public good, they want you to rev up the economy and start spending your money versus holding on to it and it earning interest on those balances. That's why if you don't spend your money within 3 years, you have to rebate any arbitrage back to the IRS. So what informs your bond plan is how much can you actually spend within a 3-year time frame. So the specifics of the rule are 5% committed within 6 months, and that's entering into contracts, whereas 85% spent, that's dollars out the door within that 3-year of the issuance of the first series of bonds. So if you only issue 30 million of your 200 million, that 3-year rule only applies to what you actually issue, that 30 million. Okay, so this was the original plan that had been put together at the beginning of Measure M. This was a starting point, never intended to be what you actually issue. So these were based on various assumptions. On assessed valuation growth, we assumed 4.5% over the life of the program, whereas your historical averages have been about 5.5% going back to 1985. We assumed interest rates of 4.6% to 5.1%. That was conservative before the spike in tariffs, but it's still reasonable in this current time. And then we've got the final tax rate in 2058, and each financing itself was planned to not have a term exceeding 30 years. So how did we access the 200 million? You can see on the bottom left-hand corner, equal issuances over 3 years. And I think part of the prioritization process is what projects did you want to address initially? And then that will determine whether we access 30 million, 50 million, $75 million, because the issuance schedule shown here is not set in stone. Your assessed valuation is going to change by the time we issue Series B. The interest rate environment is going to change by the time we issue Series C and D. And so the bond program is very nimble. And one consideration outside of the facilities is the district does have its certificates of participation that are still on the district books. It is a allowable bond project to pay off these COPs that has a current outstanding principal amount of $2.65 million with an annual debt service of about $235,000 a year. And once the board determines the amount that Series A is going to be issued for, Bond Counsel will draft the various legal documents and bring them back on May 27th for the consideration of board approval. It's about 200 pages plus of documents that's summarized on this one page. The authorizing resolution is going to specify the terms and parameters of the bonds. Are you issuing 30, 50, or $60 million? It'll specify the term, whether it's 25 or 30 years, and then authorize district staff to take the steps necessary to complete the issuance of the bonds. There will also be draft documents that will have a bunch of blanks in there. That's intentional. Those will be completed when the bonds are successfully sold and issued. That includes a preliminary official statement. That's the prospectus that Kristen and her team at Piper Sandler will take to market the district's bonds to 40 plus investors who hopefully participate in purchasing your bonds. There will also be a bond purchase agreement, which will finalize the actual parameters by which the bonds are sold. And then the continuing disclosure certificate. Anytime you sell bonds in the public market, you covenant to investors that you'll provide ongoing information like your audit, your budget, and demographic data. So the next steps are, again, documents would come for approval on May 27th. And then because the bonds would be issued in the next fiscal year, in addition to the resolution to authorize the issuance, there would be what's called a tax levy resolution. And that will authorize LA County to set the tax rate at the beginning of the fiscal year to make sure that that tax rate is continued and doesn't go down to zero. So with that, welcome any questions you may have.
So the May 27, we need to approve for resolution, right?
That's correct.
And the resolution is that need to, the 5 member approve or just majority?
You need just a majority for the resolution.
I have a question, as it relates to just inflation, because I see the interest rate and I understand that part. But, there was earlier when he was presenting, he mentioned how bond phases can be longer or shorter depending on our prioritization. And since we only have the 200 or so million, isn't that going to be worth less as time goes on and everything will? So is there that type of analysis in here that accounts for that?
So great question. So this $200 million, that's just going to be nominal dollars. And so whether you issue this in 4 issuances every 3 years versus 3 issuances every 2 years, you would have more purchasing power the more bonds you access upfront, because a bond financing 10 years from now will not be able to generate as much sort of purchasing power for
Right,
what you
yeah.
need your dollars for. So I think that's really a function of what construction inflation might look like and where you prioritize how much and when. But this $200 million is really just set as a nominal amount.
Jeff, did you want to?
Mhm,
Can I ask a question?
mhm.
Does the district need to know the size of each of the bond issuances at this point in time?
No.
Or they only need to know that initial, sorry.
And that's very common because 2 or 3 years from now, what you think is a priority today, I mean, knock on wood, but maybe there's a weather event and your roof falls down and that's not something that you had planned on. So that's why the bond program is nimble, to be able to accommodate changes, not only in the project side, but on the economy side in your assessed valuation and the interest rates.
So mean each time we will issue about 50 million, right?
That was the plan, but
Uh-huh.
you are not bound by that.
And then each time when we sell the bond, and then we get the money in, so is that the school district need to open a new account and keep the money there?
Great question. So all bond proceeds, when bonds are issued, they're deposited with LA County.
Oh,
So
LA
LA County will work with your business office to establish a building fund. And that's where the dollars will be deposited.
Is that they can earn the interest?
And as of the most current quarterly report, the LA County Treasury pool is earning about 3.5%.
Or is a fixed? Always a.
Oh, it's variable.
I've been talking to some of my counterparts in other school districts that have been through bond projects before, and they have said to me, it is less expensive for the district to have 3 issuances than it is 4.
Of course.
Can you talk a little bit about that and
Yes.
and how, how expensive it is? And because I see 4 there, but I was advised by other superintendents to try to do 3 if at all possible, because it saves you, they said, an inordinate amount of money, but I don't know what that means to them.
Right. So with anytime you, and that's a great point. So every time you issue bonds, there's going to be costs of issuance. So that's our fee, underwriting fee, legal fees, every time you get a credit rating, you have to pay a fee to them. And it's to the tune of several hundreds of thousands of dollars each time. So if the district has the capacity where you say, we can accelerate the spending, and assuming the assessed value is, sort of robust and grows to allow us to issue more, if you can issue more under less financings, you pay us less and you get more for your important projects. That would definitely be the best case scenario.
Possible depending on the assessed value.
Correct.
Okay.
And the interest rate, the financing constraints.
What would be the maximum bond issuance?
I would,
Like, could we do 50, 150?
if
Like 3 is what Dr. De La Torre said.
what we can do is run the numbers, because these assumptions are sort of they're sort of static. So in order to get 50, 100, and 50, certain of these variables will have to change. Either the interest rate assumption has to come down or the assessed value has to go up. And, again, these are reasonable on the interest rates and on the assessed value, but it might take something like increasing your assessed valuation growth assumption to that 5.5% figure. But it's certainly doable. It just depends on how less conservative you might want to be on building your bond program, because if assessed value doesn't grow the same rate that you project it to, we risk going over our $60 legal tax rate limit. And that's something that we're going to try to maintain for the life of the bond program.
So we can potentially issue one time with 20,000, 20 million.
A,
Yeah.
if you could spend the money within 3 years. B, if interest rates, if there was a period of time where districts were issuing bonds in, with a 2 point something%, if interest rates were that low, then, all things equal,
I
yes,
see.
we could do something like that.
I see.
So during the underwriting process, so the credential is just depends on the rating or they are looking for the school district annual report for
Kristen, would you like to chime in with
the positive certificate from the LA education. What they are looking for? So then we need to maintain a strong
Yeah,
status.
that's a great question, Trustee Chang. So it's 4 categories that they're looking at. One is the local economy, so the tax base and the assessed value, and it's the growth over time, the strength of the tax base. Ours is largely residential, so we're reliant on the turnover of homes. But as Chet mentioned, the value of our homes is quite notable. And it really drives and attracts people to buy homes as they become available here. So, and then being surrounded just in the local greater Los Angeles County, the economic activity here that brings people within our area, even some of the small businesses, those are all contributing factors to the strength of the local economy and then our town itself and the tax base. That's one big component. The second significant component, as you mentioned, is the district's finances and the continued strength of the district's fiscal condition that contributed to the upgrade in the rating from Moody's to AA2, 1 notch below AAA, is hugely important. So as I mentioned as well, the parcel taxes, the support by the foundation, these external revenue sources for the district are contributing factors that they even mention in their report, in addition to how the district has managed one-time monies that many districts hired additional staff that they're now in positions where they might have to lay off staff. Those are the fact that the district has managed through an unprecedented time through the pandemic and emerged with such sound financials and financial position today is a major factor in the credit rating. And then the district management, the continuity from the board to district leadership is a significant factor in the rating criteria. And then the fourth one is the low debt burden. I mean, we were virtually until the passage of Measure M debt-free. And the fact that the district may elect to pay off the COPs for the Barth facility is eliminating debt on the district's general fund, also a credit positive. So those are the key points.
Right.
that
So
especially-
how relate to the pension?
I'm sorry?
The pension, there's mention about the district debt or pension.
Yeah, so that's something that's going to be part of the credit rating analysis. And I think the good thing is for your STRS and PERS liabilities, that's something that all California school districts are grappling with. And so investors know that that's an ongoing liability. So I don't want to say they sort of brush it aside, but they realize that that's going to be a factor whether they decide to buy San Marino bonds or Arcadia bonds or Burbank bonds. Kristen touched on the credit strengths and the categories. Investors are looking at those as well because they usually will want to buy the highest credit quality school district. So all things equal, if you have a AA1 San Marino bond that you can purchase versus a AA3 district not in LA County, they would probably decide to choose San Marino Unified School District bonds.
Is that just, that's the question, is that just limited to pensions or are we talking about, districts that have debt because they pay for retiree health benefits?
That also includes OPEB as well.
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of districts that do that, we do not do that. So we don't have an OPEB liability because we don't contribute to the cost of retiree benefits in any way, shape, or form. They can continue to be on our policies, but at their expense.
Got it. That's a great point.
So your suggestion, we have to pay off outstanding the COP.
That would certainly be.
How soon? Once the.
Well, as soon as we can.
Yeah, we want to capture savings by not having to pay the interest on that debt service for the COPs. So we can utilize funds from Measure M to pay that off to reap some savings from that interest.
In our resolution to the board, so we were very transparent about our plans to pay that off. And because we've got some state matching money back, I think our outstanding balance is what, 2.4 million?
2.6 million.
Oh, 2.6 million. So we got that balance way down to 2.6. And so it's not gonna be that much to pay it off, and we should pay it off. We will save like millions of dollars in, oh, you have it.
1.3 million.
1.3
Mhm.
in interest, and I think that it speaks for itself. Yeah.
Out of our general fund. That's where that savings will be from, right?
Well, yes, because we would ordinarily have to pay for that out of our general fund. Right.
Great.
Go back to, yeah, we finish this first. Yeah. Anyone have a more question? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you the question again. So right now in the construction, how much per square feet? I know the tariff look like a drop, right? Yesterday, but you would guess about 300, 400, 500
Dollar per square foot
Yeah.
for like a standard classroom?
for classroom, regular classroom.
Building new or modernized, building new? I would just guess it's probably in that 500 to 600 range for a standard classroom. Now, if you're going to like STEM or performing arts, it's upward of 1,000. If not more, it's quite expensive to build a new classroom.
Okay, thank you.
You asked to hear from Stuart, but you didn't ask the other principals.
Oh.
If they had something.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They'd like to say.
Yeah, please.
I'd love to hear their input,
Well,
but we've heard a lot of input over the last 2 years, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, looking at the plans for Valentine, obviously there's a lot of work that has been done at Valentine. I think the priorities are really outlined very clearly and in a way of things that we really do need. The two-story building, the additional kindergarten area. Thank you for keeping our parking lots the same. That was a major point for parents and community to have additional parking on one way in, one way out. With the TK and kindergarten area, though, it does get rid of our kindergarten circle, which is we do use for pickup and drop off for those grade levels. And it replaces it with parking spots off in Huntington, which again, they're backing out of parking spaces into a main street. I'm not sure how that will work. Again, if we can talk about those things through the design process, right?
that would be wonderful. There's overall and this.
CJ might have a
Maybe
comment
they'll do
about that.
this,
We
maybe
actually
they'll do the slant the other way, so you back in and then pull
I
it
was
forward.
just gonna say exactly how you ended it. During the design process, we would be contacting site administrators and really figuring out what needs to happen. When we walked that site, we saw that traffic circle and it seems like it serves Huntington and Valentine in different ways. So it's something that we would definitely explore as we get closer to implementation.
Is there any way that we can have a 3 TK classes like a kind of like outside of the one to the push back to the side on the TK in there? Because we're not sharing the TK. I kind of worry about the 3 TK classes outside that they're not sharing the playground.
Absolutely. Everything that's shown on the facilities master plan is really diagrammatical. And once we have an architect or design team on board, we'll be presenting those design ideas to the board to seek further input. This is really just to begin that process.
I see.
Okay, you have a more question? Okay, okay, next, Mary.
Thank you for your. I would agree that and just thrilled. Most of all, to be getting some more classrooms. And with the Valentine edition, for able to reabsorb some classrooms. And I know, as our, enrollment continues to grow year after year, I start to get nervous about where am I gonna put this group if I need to open up another classroom, where we're gonna put that, like robotics, right now, I'm kind of sort of talk about that. So we're thrilled about the additional classrooms, because the recovery of the hardcore services, we got that big garage, so yes, if that's an easy first, plan, that would be great, safer for the kids. The bathrooms and the overall, internal services of the classrooms definitely need an upgrade, so we would agree that the modernization, is in line. In that way, community changing, as we talked about our central area and our allowed to a more multi-purpose room. So yes, we are happy and excited about the renderings and the conversations that our facilities master site team has come up with and what you created. So we'll look forward to more final discussions coming soon, or next phase discussion. Any questions specifically about?
Any question?
Does the play field as it is, serve enough sports teams? I mean, could it be made to be more multi-purpose, like the track? Or like, just anything beyond just that big space?
Well, I was even looking yesterday, and I was videoing, kids really use all of that grass space. Especially at lunchtime and during PE, for soccer and all the fields and football. I was told, and people who've been here longer, we used to have a track.
Yeah, there
right?
was,
We had
yeah.
that, and
It was by the
gym,
gym,
and I haven't been asked that by our, track and our, cross country or our PE. The kids run a lap, it's actually probably softer on the adult
Yeah,
feet, try to do grass, and as long as part of the plan is to, I think, regrade and improve the grass, so it's more level overall. I think that would be wonderful, because, again, the basketball courts. Our PE classes use every single space they can, right? The tennis courts, the wrestling, the gym, the outdoor spaces. So I do think we utilize it well. But we'll keep talking, right, as we progress, but yes, my athletics and motions were pleased with that.
Okay. Okay, next, Dr. Wolf.
So since we're only talking about initially the medical arts and CTE facilities, there's one issue that I have that I don't think it's affected by the law, I think. And you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but we were working towards this solution anyway, but as we move back into the 300 classrooms that are technically outside the safety of our campus, we need to extend the gate that goes all the way across that driveway so that we are blocking those students in just like we are the rest of our students. But we had walked it this year, or I think we're heading towards that. And yeah, there's conversation as well, so. And then, since we talked about a safety issue and Ms. Gill, you brought up the stadium seats. I would also point out that we're well past the lifespan of the actual football field and track. And then there are starting to become some safety issues there as well, so not sure how we'll get to address those, but those are some smaller things that don't rely on building a new gym or stadium.
Yeah, that would be impactful though, still.
Smaller, but still a multi-million dollar project too. Yeah. Or maybe it's relative, right?
By the way, we talking about the whole school side, and especially we talk more about classroom. For this 200 million pound, how much we want invest in the IT?
There is money and a budget set aside for those priorities related to technology. And in fact, technology is integrated throughout the modernization, even in new construction as well. And you know, I've been learning so much from working with CJ over the past couple of weeks, when he was educating me on the fact that you want to do your modernizations at the end, because as you build new construction, you're going to have new standards. And then you do your modernizations, which will bring your older facilities up to that standard as well. So that was a complete game changer for me, because I was so eager to modernize right away, because I can see there are some areas of improvement, but I think this process has just been so valuable. So yes, there are funds earmarked for technology. But overall, I'm just so pleased to be able to work with CJ because he has the experience and the knowledge. And as a team, I think with this session of being able to work together, we're going to really achieve some amazing things for our facilities. So.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, that safety piece is so important. Making sure all of our campuses are secure and truly closed campuses, so we can control the access and not just think that we do, but actually, especially for the high school and middle school. I feel like the two elementaries are pretty well controlled, or but I think that, like Dr. Wolf said, getting the east driveway, and then we could figure out something for all the glass at the front of the foyer and Carver as well. So
Agreed. Yeah. Really looking at all of those things, and I agree wholeheartedly that safety is really critically important.
Jeff, you have a more comment?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was glad that Dr. Wolf mentioned football field and track, because that was identified that I have a feeling that's pretty streamlined ESA process. So that could and should be probably in that first set. It's very visible early win for the district to be able to show the community, hey, this is your dollars for. I had a question on the restroom modernizations. Is there any concern that modernization triggers new standards at all to those restrooms? Or anything along those lines?
Not necessarily for all gendered restrooms, but ADA for sure.
I saw the lunch shelters you had on the early project recommendations. And I think that probably applies more to Huntington and Valentine, because Harbor's lunch court, in order to expand it, it required more engineering. Okay.
In terms of fire sprinkler, is that?
I'm talking about the storm drain. It's along the south side of the playground there. Everything brings down. Lunch court is elevated. So you can expand it.
Issue, right?
Pardon?
A grading issue there?
Yeah, it's a great separation
Right.
there. You can expand it a couple feet in the plant, that's not an issue. Let's see. I had a question, there was a question that came up about the TK play structures, which was not identified in your earlier project recommendations, but I was curious if those were purchased now installed someplace in the play yard, is it easy to be able to relocate them later if and when that play yard would get reconfigured?
It's really not something that's really easily relocated. I haven't seen that done at a school.
Probably poor footings and all that you're not getting them up.
Yeah.
Inside a portable.
Let's see, I had a question, actually one regarding interim housing and relocation of existing portables. The in-ground portables that,
Concrete foundation.
Harbor right now. If those were to be moved to a different location on campus,
It's much more difficult to move portables with concrete foundations. I'm assuming the stucco ones that are on the near the fire lane, those would be much more difficult to relocate. But it'd be something we'd be looking to explore, or possibly just configuring our designs to incorporate that structure there, if that makes sense.
yeah, that does make sense. Where I was kind of going with the questioning was logistically, if you were to explore relocating those, you had the relocation all prep, utility full, is it something that can be accomplished in this?
Relocating portables can typically be accomplished in the summer.
Even in ground one?
We would just have to look at get a lot more into the weeds to figure that out, but typically it could be. In-ground makes things a lot more complicated though, so we'd have to look into it.
Well, all of our portables are way past their life.
And not in ground.
Oh, really?
Above ground.
Okay. Yeah, because
The above ground ones we purchased used. If that gives you any sense of how old they are.
Timing wise, you mentioned that Val's not shifting existing above ground portables down to make space for the two-story construction, two-story building, and then also utilizing them potentially for people out in front of them.
And Valentine, whatever's needed, we just want to increase our flexibility prior to disposing of those classrooms. We want to make the best use of them.
Yeah, and I think I like that plan. That made a lot of sense. The only question, and this would get you in that program, is how that might be impacted timing wise by the construction of the yard there.
It does push that construction towards the end. One of the other reasons we like that location is because we would have to grade for the placement of those portables, which is work that we'd have to do for the NPR regardless. So it kind of met two needs there.
And then there was just one other question. We mentioned at Valentine doing the two-story building in the TKA building as you said you consider doing them together. It could be done together, but you were thinking about doing them in two phases.
In two phases or slightly staggered. Really, I would not want to start both of those projects at the same time for that campus, just because you want to have the site acclimated to the construction that's going on and see how that first project is going, and then see how manageable that second one would go. The design process can start concurrently for those projects.
Sure. Thinking in terms of cost escalation, the longer you can spread it out, the more it's going to escalate.
That's the battle we're trying to fight.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. How about the cabinet? Anyone want to contribute?
I think we're super excited about the opportunity that Measure M brings to our school district. And we feel like we have hired the right partner. And certainly Keegan and Kristen are wonderful partners as well, and we're so grateful for their support and professionalism. And we're just excited to move forward. We are committed to providing not only the Board of Education with regular updates. We continue to meet with our president of the board and vice president of the board every other week to give them updates on where we are with Measure M. We have a standing item on the agenda at the board's request to make sure that we are updating not just the board again, but the entire community in a public open session meeting about the progress that we're making on Measure M. And we're committed to doing just that. So we're going to be as transparent as we can be in talking about where we're headed. We really appreciate all of the board's work and support in this project going forward. And we're just at the beginning of this. So lots more to be revealed as we move forward, but we're going to do it in partnership with certainly the board and our wonderful principals. And it's never easy. I was not in this position when we had the other two bonds, but I will tell you, I was an interested observer. And I know it's hard. It's a stressful thing when you have construction going on at any school site. So we'll just need to prepare ourselves. The principals will have to prepare their teachers and their staff just to have some patience. And that will happen for a while, but we need to really be ready for that. And certainly the district office will continue to provide support and assistance, but we're just raring to go. We're ready to, move forward.
Hi, I moved out of my seat, so I lost my turn. The elephant in the room, which is really about change orders and escalating costs. I would imagine you're managing that.
I am not doing the construction management specifically, but we would provide guide rails in our contracts and everything to prevent change orders and provide for contingencies.
And the district is, being trained on lease back, which is something that Mr. Nolan had talked to me about extensively before we even got to this phase and stage, and that would provide in and of itself some guardrails and protections against change orders, and it provides an incentive to the company that's doing the construction not to have change orders. So there are ways that we're looking at to prevent that. I cannot guarantee that there's never ever going to be a change order, because I never heard about something that is that perfect in all my life. But we are certainly aware that we don't want to see change orders, and so we're going to make that crystal clear. And Mr. Nolan and Mr. Nolan are going to make sure also that we have contracts with language that protects the district's interest in that regard. We also have an attorney through DWK, our bond counsel, Santana, who's also very adept at making sure that there's contract language that would protect the district's interest, and Dr. Troy, who has been really, immersing himself in all of these legal aspects going forward. I feel like we are ready for that, and we'll guard against it to the extent that we possibly can. Now, if something happens in our state, something like the fires, which happened in January, happens prospectively, those things we can't anticipate. We're just gonna have to work together on. That might be some, contingency that happens that we couldn't have planned for. But day-to-day business, we're gonna be very wedded to preventing that.
And I just want to add, we will be bringing more information to the board in terms of procurement options, because you may have different procurement methods depending on your projects. So we will be bringing the board along with that. It wasn't the focus of today's study session, but we will definitely bring that back. to the
Yeah,
board.
one of the things I learned from members that oversaw the previous bonds was the imperative that we communicate and we over communicate what is happening. The community will not stand for something that's happening that they're not aware of. If it affects roads, if it affects safety, I mean, we need to get out in front of that. And also, thank you, Mr. Chang, for making sure that we have these conversations, because the more informed we are, the more we can inform the community. And it is imperative, because what we don't want happening is what happened last time when they went out for a bond. Then they said, oh, don't quite have enough money. And so they had to go out for a second bond. And that was not like the community was very upset about that. So we really want to manage this money. This is an incredible opportunity for us to build something for the future of our community, for our children, and it's so critical that we have all the pieces and the importance of information. Okay.
Okay, anyone want to make a comment? Yeah, if not, I think the meeting adjourned, right?
Thank you, President Chang.
Good job, Mr. Chang.